Hello, everybody. I'm Ed Parcaut, the host of Helping the Brave, and let's bring in our guest today, Tim Newman. Tim, thanks for coming on the show today. We really appreciate you being here.
Ed, thanks so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this. I've been, listening / watching what you've been doing for a while, and I think it's a great thing that we're doing is helping veterans and their families.
Yeah, it's one of my purposes now. I don't know about you, but when I got out, I ran away from the military.
Yes.
And I came back to it after, my son's in the Army now, so I won't hold that against you. Army Navy game has a totally different view now in today's world with me.
I'm sure.
But I mean, so I came back to it. I even did an event for veterans last year through my Rotary. We did a 2-day event we did a fire walk. It was called Operation Fire Walk, where we had a 2-day event. They came to listen to motivational speakers for a couple hours, and then they ended the night. They walked on coals to overcome their limiting beliefs, and it was pretty amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. But I was like you. When I was in the Army, I knew everything, and like I said, when I got out, I said, I'm out of here, run away just like you did, and looking back on it, if I only knew now what I knew then, how much different life would be. But it all worked out, and I can't really thank our military enough, really, for the things that I didn't even know that I learned.
And let's get into some of that in a second.
Yeah.
But first, I want to kind of get into why the Army, and that's not like my son joined the Army because they guaranteed his billet, where none of the other services would.
So it's kind of a loaded question. I was a knucklehead. Not that I'm not a knucklehead now, but I was really a knucklehead when I was younger. And it was my parents said, either you're getting out of the house or you're going in the military. And I come from a military family. My father was in the Army, and that's kind of why I went that route. And he was in the 101st. And again, back when I knew everything, I said, well, if he was in the 101st, I'm definitely not doing that. So I ended up in the 82nd. And so there was always that argument.
Right. Was that the airborne?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. That's what my son was, airborne medic.
Mm-hmm.
And then after getting stationed in Alaska and jumping right as the pandemic hit, he came out of boot camp. So you got these geared up people ready to go, and they can't do anything but stay in their rooms. Yeah, it was pretty bad. They lost a lot of guys up there that year.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
And it was a sad thing. But that's why that's why it's so important to me. We forget how important it was until later on in life.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have things where we could have stayed and connected, where the people get out now, they're connected. Where when we got, I don't know, when I got out in 90, there wasn't an internet. There wasn't the Facebook. There wasn't any of this other stuff to stay connected.
Yeah, I got out in 89. And so you're right. There was nothing there. It was, when you pulled off of, base wherever you were, that was it. Maybe there was, I'm still not a letter writer, but that was really the only way to stay in touch with people. Because again, if you stayed, on post in the barracks, you didn't have a phone. You had the phone that was in the hallway, and that was it.
Right. Yeah. The lines for the damn payphones. I remember them. And then flash forward to today, or even 8. Yeah. My son's been in 5 years. They had their cell phones in boot camp.
Oh, there would have been none of that.
Well, no, it's just that was on the Army, and it's a totally different world. I remember when I went in, and they were like, the current military sucks compared to how it used to be. They can't put your hands on you. And then now you go fast forward to now, it's like what they get away with now. It's not an army of one, it's an army of individuals.
Right. Well,
unfortunately, there's always, I say it's just like if you ever watch the movie Stripes.
Yes.
That's exactly what we're dealing with now. Those type of people.
Don't get me started.
That's okay. You can start all you want. That's what's great about having my podcast. I can do whatever I want on it.
Oh man. Yeah.
And it's not made for children. I checked that box.
Well, there you go. That takes care of it then. Yeah. I mean, it's, I think, in some respects, I do think we need to go back to the way it used to be. I mean, because again, I was a knucklehead and you show up and I was in infantry. You show up to Fort Benning. We literally pulled into Fort Benning right about 11:30 at night, and I was petrified. and you learn real quick that you're either going to fall in line or there's going to be some real consequences. So it's good.
There's some good and bad to all that, and that's all I'll say.
Yeah, there is.
I totally believe that too, because even though they couldn't put their hand, I was in the Navy, talk about not really a boot camp, but they still woke us up with trash cans at 4:30 in the morning. The first day you got there, most of us got in at 2:00 in the morning, and we're freaking tired. And it doesn't matter. You just learn to deal with it and move on. And that's the one thing that military teaches you. And they still teach a lot to this day. And we don't understand that. What do you mean I got to make my bed? Well, that's attention to detail. The things that they teach you that you don't understand at the time they're teaching you, and then later on in life, you're like, people are like, man, you're so attention to detail. It's it's from the military.
Right. Exactly. I mean, it's because if you mess something up and you're not paying attention, there are real consequences.
Yeah. And I was a corpsman, so if you mess up, people die.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a totally different world than today in business, where you have to mess up to learn from what you're doing.
Yeah, and that's kind of a hard thing to get over and to learn. And I actually try and teach that to my students. I try and say, I want you to start thinking outside the box. Well, thinking is a different issue altogether. And critical thinking is a different issue. But trying to get them to think on their own and to be creative and to test the waters and step outside that box and be okay to fail, because they don't want to fail right now. They're so afraid of getting it wrong.
Right. All right. So we didn't. So you said students. So we didn't get there. Yeah. So we were talking about you were in. And
yeah.
And you got out. What did you do when you first got out? What was your first job? I'm just curious.
Well, so when I got out, so it's kind of weird. I got out like it was like 30 days early to go to college, and like literally a week after I got out was when we invaded Panama the first time. So, I was walking on a college campus, and, my buddies were deploying to Panama that first time. So, got out, went to college for a little bit. And again, I was still a knucklehead, and I almost failed out. Had the college fund GI Bill, and so they were paying for it. And I was still, doing some of the same stupid things, until I realized, again, if I don't start getting my stuff together, I'm going to waste all the money that I got.
And there wasn't much money back then.
No, it wasn't. I think total it was like 30,000 tops.
Yeah, it was not much at all, not compared to today.
Yeah. And so ended up having my first child, and that when my first child was born, that was when I figured out I better start getting it together. And I went to school, and I was an athletic trainer, and so it was kind of military-like in that you had a goal, you were working with a team, start to finish, and those types of I worked well in that structured environment.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that when we get out, we lose that structure, and a lot of people don't do well without it. And so you said so I missed the first Gulf War by 2 days.
Okay.
Because when I got out, I was on delayed. So I had 6. I was in 5 years, 5 months, and 14 days. So I had 5 months and 16 days of where they could pull me back in, and I missed it by 2 days. And everybody's like, "Well, when'd you want?" No, I didn't want to go because I was a corpsman. I would have been with you guys, with the Marines in the action, and that's okay. I don't want anybody to go to combat unless they have to.
Right.
And the people who did, I'm sorry, and I have my hats off to all of you. So,
yes, absolutely. Yeah, you bring that up, and again, I listened to a lot of the episodes, and you had Brian Fleming on recently, and his story, just getting over to Afghanistan, and it was here like a couple of days, and got hit with an IED. I mean, it's you just never know. And God bless these men and women who who put themselves in the line of fire like that.
Yeah, I mean, it is, unfortunately, but people don't look back at history. And I tried to, so I became the president of my Rotary. My term was up end of June, and when I did my first meeting, I explained to them about veterans committing suicide. And
Yes.
I explained, and at that point I said 22 a day because that was the term. But by the time I was finished with my year, I realized by everything we've done to help veterans that year, it was closer to 50. But I also explained to them how many veterans we lost in all the different wars, come all the way up to now, and how many veterans we lose to suicide is more than the last 3 wars put together, because we don't lose as many people. It is just broadcast so much more now.
Mm-hmm.
And that, because I mean, the worst war we ever did was the Civil War. So
we did that to ourselves, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then each war after that was a lot. I mean, for World War I, but then each year got less. But and I'm not please, I'm not saying that what people go through today is not as important, but I'm just saying that we don't lose. I mean, look at Normandy. What was it, 12 seconds the average person life was expectancy? That's when your government doesn't care about you, when they throw more bodies at it, and your life expectancy was so short, to where now
so short, right?
So important to everybody. So
and I think there's a number of other reasons why we don't lose so many with technology, and again, I think our training is so much better than any time it's ever been, and those types of things. But we also need to do a better job of not putting ourselves in those positions where we have to send our troops over there.
Less wars. We don't need to be in every conflict and everything.
Exactly.
I think we agree pretty much the same way that most vets, and that's why my big push is more veterans need to be in politics, so we do less wars.
Yes. Absolutely.
Because the way it's set up now, the politicians don't care because they don't have family members who've ever went to war.
Right.
And I'm not saying all of them, but most of them. So
most of them.
And we need less. We don't need to be in certain places and spending money over there where we need to spend the money here to help us. What
exactly. we do help our veterans. I mean, our VA system is broken. Our veterans come back, and we forget about them, and they're left to their own devices, and and we spend so much money on other things. We send so much money to other countries, and then we let their immigrants come here, and so we're paying for it twice, and we're housing and paying for these other people, and the people that have fought for our country and sacrificed for our country, we've Pontius Pilated them and forgotten about them.
Yeah, it's pretty sad that 100% disabled gets 4,200, right around there. I don't know exact, but if you're an immigrant, you get that plus put room and board and other money to eat and everything else. It's just we need to focus on our veterans. I mean, in New York, they kicked a bunch of homeless veterans out of an apartment complex or a motel and put in migrants. And then I don't know if you know this, but during the VA was actually instead of taking care of veterans claims, they were processing migrant claims.
I did not know that, and I wish I didn't. But I'm not surprised, and I'm not surprised. That's not,
that's unfortunate what they do, but that's why I'm so much coming back and trying to help vets, because of what I see now, how bad it is. I had another veteran, you listen to some of the shows, but I had another veteran who he wants to scrap the VA like I did, and just do an insurance and let you go anywhere, and it's paid at 120%, so everybody takes it. That would be cheaper than what we do now,
and it'd be cheaper. You get much better care, quicker care. You could go to the doctor that you choose, and not, and again, there's some good VA doctors. There's some good people in the VA, and we all understand that. But just when I was in, so this is 87, 88, I went to have my wisdom teeth pulled, and the next week I was supposed to go back and get the two on the other side pulled. And I went back to the same dentist, and he said, "Oh, we never pulled your first ones." I got up out of the chair and left. I said, "Forget it." I mean, number one, I was there. You pulled my two wisdom teeth. Now you're telling me that you never did it. And that's sometimes the kind of care that veterans get when they get out.
Mm-hmm. Well, right now, so, and I'm not getting political, but when Trump was in, he said, "Go anywhere," right?
Yes.
That thing's still in place, but now they have it. You have to wait to get approval now.
Well, to go anywhere. And that doesn't make any sense, right? To go anywhere, but wait.
Yeah. And that's why it needs to be scrapped. And there's so much things changes we need to do, take care of our veterans first. And that's what we need to do. And we as veterans need to have a voice and get it out there and get that word out. And that's why I do this, is just to help our vets and get the word out for people to understand what's going on. All right. So what do you do now?
So basically I help people become better communicators.
And how did you get into this?
Oh, this is another real good one. So again, I was I started everything off with I was a
knucklehead. We'll just add that every time before you do a story. We'll just start with that.
And on top of everything else, also being in the military, you get really good at getting out of things that you don't want to do. Right? You find ways to get out of things. So when I got out of the Army and went to school, one of the classes you're supposed to take is a human communications, public speaking course. And so I go to take the course first time. I look at the syllabus, and you have to get up in front of people and talk to people. And I said, I'm not doing that. Just even though being in the military, you have to talk to people, right? You're leading people all the time.
But they have to listen to you. It's a little different.
Well, yeah, there's that too. And so I get to my senior year, and my advisor says, "Tim, if you don't take this course, you're not going to graduate." And so I said, "Okay, I'll take the course." And the first time was my time to get up in front of class and speak. And again, you got to remember now, this is before we had PowerPoint, before we had, computers and all this other stuff, to ready. So I get up in front of the class. There's a wooden lectern on top of the desk, and there's a trash can right next to the table there. And I had my notes up on the lectern. I started talking, and I threw up right in front of the class. And so I ended up getting through it. And throughout my career, I became a college professor. And so what I do now is I stand up in front of people and I talk. And I teach people. And what I've found throughout my career is that, young people, their communication skills have not gotten any better. It's gotten worse. And the reality of it is, I don't care what business or what industry you get into, if you can't communicate with people, you will not be successful. If you can't communicate verbally, if you can't communicate in writing, you're just not going to be successful. There's nothing you can do. And when COVID hit, it got even worse. It got even worse, even quicker than in the past. So that's what I'm doing now. Is I'm helping people become better communicators. I've developed a system that these are the steps that you take if you want to communicate verbally. And it doesn't matter if you're giving a presentation in class, a speech, if you're a team leader in a team meeting, if you're going to a networking event, if you're going to a job interview. If you do these 5 things, you're going to get better. And then ultimately, expressing that no matter what it is that you're doing, the only way you're going to get really good at it is practicing it and doing it. So you can't take Tim's get out of everything route. You actually have to do stuff.
So now you became that person.
Yes, I'm that guy.
And how long have you been doing this?
Oh, so I've been teaching for 25 years. I've been teaching a little bit longer than that, but the public speaking stuff, I started it probably around 2005, and then really kind of formalized the process probably about 5 years ago. When I realized, just like anything else, when I first started out, I kept telling students, you need to stop doing this, stop doing this, stop doing this, but I wasn't giving them how to stop doing it or what to do differently. And that's as we get older and we learn more, I realize that I have to actually tell them how to stop it, or how to change things, or what to do differently. And so it took me a little bit to formalize that process, but I've been doing this for about 5-6 years.
Okay. And what's the name of your company?
It's called Tim Newman Speaks, but the public speaking portion is called the Foreman for Public Speaking. That's the class that they take.
I just wanted to find it. There it is. All right, just wanted to have it in case I had a question.
Yeah.
And people can find you there. That's the best way for people to find you.
Yeah, that's one way. You could also find me on LinkedIn. I'm there, and I post pretty regularly there. And I also have the podcast, Speaking with Confidence podcast, that I do.
And how long have you been doing
right now?
this?
It's coming. Well, so the Speaking with Confidence podcast is only about maybe 6 or 7 months, but I've got another podcast that's completely different that I've been doing for a little bit over 2 years.
And what's the different one?
Oh, so that is it's called the Golf Week Amateur Tour, the podcast. So and that's a lot of fun. Yeah. And so it's a lot of, it's a lot of fun. So the Golf Week Amateur Tour is it's a tour in 47 cities across the country. And my partner, he lives in El Paso, and basically we talk about what's going on across the country. And we've been doing that for 2 years. It's gotten to the point where in that one we travel. We'll do a live show. I just got back from about over Labor Day. I was in French Lick, Indiana at French Lick Resort. We've been all over the country doing live shows. It's a lot of fun.
Always writing off all those costs.
Well, exactly, and we actually have sponsors that pay for that.
Wow,
too.
How long you been doing? I know you said, but how long you been doing that one?
It's actually 2 years, almost to the day. Actually, yeah.
Wow. And how'd you find your sponsors?
They're the person who owns the tour gets the sponsors for us. So when I started that podcast, it was, I had a bunch of things going on in my life, a lot of family stuff, mom's not doing well. And I was spending so much time working. I said, I need to find something that's fun to do. And so we started that kind of on a whim, and it took off almost immediately. And as much as I love it, it's now work. You know how it is. What the process is with running podcasts. Yeah. It's especially when it gets going and it's established. It's not just okay. You turn the computer on, you turn the microphone on, and you start talking. There's a lot more to it than that. And again, when people catch on and start to expect things, again, you have to make sure that you're doing it right and at a high quality, especially when you're doing it for, as a branded podcast for a business.
Right. Because people understand. It's a lot of work. You have to be consistent. You have to do certain things. You have to release it on the same day. You have to do certain things. They want to see certain things done. And it becomes a lot of work. You need help though. Mm-hmm. Otherwise you can't do it.
Exactly. And for right now, that the golf one, it's an every other week, and that's what it'll be. It'll be an every other week. I don't know that we have enough content, to do on a weekly basis. And very shortly, the Speaking with Confidence podcast it's every other week. Very shortly, that's going to go to weekly, and probably multi times during the week.
Then that really, so nobody cares how often you do it, just as long as you consistently drop it the day that you say you're going to do it, right?
Exactly.
Because there are some people who do very successful one thing a month,
mm-hmm.
and that's just what they're known for. There's other people. I do a daily live Monday through Friday at 8:30 on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and then we put that up as a podcast. So mm-hmm. That's a daily one. And then I also do another one that's, besides this veteran helping the brave, I do a veterans edition real estate one for veterans, and that's twice a week. And so, you start getting into the stuff, and next thing you know, you're doing so many of them.
Exactly. Yeah. And it really kind of takes over your life. But again, if you're going to do it, you have to do it well. And like I said, you have to be consistent, because your listeners or your viewers, if you're not consistent, they won't show up.
Yeah. and here's a prime example. My Inner Edison podcast I've had for almost 3 years now. I was in the top 1% of the world on that one. And then I got to a point where I was not really pissed, but people wouldn't talk about their failures. Inner Essence, about your greatest accomplishments come from your greatest defeats. They wouldn't talk about the whole purpose of what the show is.
The show's about, right?
And I'm like, I'm taking off 6 months. Well, I still haven't got it back to those numbers.
Wow.
From before. And that's because people, once you have the momentum, you can't stop.
Right.
However, if you're tired and don't want to do it, then just quit.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm just saying, because I did a talk on the 10-23 rule of podcasting. Everybody goes, what's that? Well, most people quit before at the 10th episode. And then the next group of people, 80% of them quit by the 10th episode. And then the rest, like the next 10% is by the 23rd episode. So if you can get past the 23rd episode, you pretty much are golden. But most people can't. They realize, man, this is a lot of work. This costs money to have it edited, cut up, and do all this stuff if you don't do it yourself. And it's getting better now. There's so much AI software and so much other stuff to make it so much easier. But you can't do it all yourself.
Right. And pretty much I have the golf one. I pretty much do all myself. I do it all. My partner, he obviously does, the interviews and stuff with me, but I set up all the interviews. I do all the editing, and then the speaking with confidence one. I do have help, in the distribution, on the distribution side of things.
And for this one, I do it myself because it's easy. This one's easy. You post it to YouTube. I do the open air. I do everything. What I'm getting at is you can do a lot yourself, but for the first 2 years of most of my stuff, I didn't do it all. I had somebody else do it. Then my industry took and then I couldn't support it myself. Just leave it.
Right.
I'm in the mortgage industry, so when rates go up 5%, it pretty much slows down to nothing.
Oh yeah. So what do you think is going to happen? Really over the next year or two? Are you? My wife's a realtor, and she's saying a lot of people are not buying right now. They're kind of waiting to see what happens with the election. What do you think is going to happen? One way or the other. If Trump wins, do you think things are going to get better, or if Kamala wins, are we in for a big problem?
So I don't know if I said on this show, but one of them, I was the president of my Rotary. I got up to 291 pounds. I got pretty big that year because I drank a lot and did a lot of eating during that year. So I've lost 50 pounds in the last 4 months, and I've been doing it by walking. And I walk about 6 days a week, 4 to 5 miles. And during that period of time, I listened to a ton of books. And because I do it on, I don't know if you've ever had Audible, but you can increase the speed on Audible. And it was an accident one time. I actually hit it and it went to 1.9, and I could understand what they were still saying really well. So I get through a book in half the time. And so I went through a lot of books. And one of the things that I read recently is, I don't care whether most of us are in the middle, right? You just have the fringes on the outside. That's from my talk. Right. So how I got into all the podcasts and everything is I got on talk radio in 2018, doing on iHeartMedia radio station. I do a real estate finance show called Real Estate Jerky. We give you something to chew on. And that's been going on for 6 years. And that's how I got into this whole thing. And that was all live. And so I've done a ton of stuff over the last 6 years. What I've learned is we're all in the middle. You just have those fringes on the outside that are the loudest, that we think is the most, but they're just the loudest. They're nobody. And this is going to come off wrong, but there's like that chick in the bar who's so freaking loud because she wants all the attention. That's what those sides are. That's who they are. You want to leave the restaurant because you hear that person in the bar. So what I'm getting at is so Democrats tax and spend, Republicans borrow and spend. So they both do their own spending and all the other stuff. The difference is the tax part of it is what you have to make sure you set yourself up to be able to get away with. And that's this tax the rich and we won't tax the working class is all BS. That's how the 16th Amendment came into play in 1913. They sold the working class that we're only going to tax the rich, the Robin Hood theory. And then all of a sudden they started taxing the rich with that amendment that brought in taxes. They taxed them the first year and got some money filling their coffers. And the next year there was no money coming in because the rich realized how to do stuff with tax benefits, like corporations, LLCs, different things. What I'm getting at, so they're pushing all these things. So that $100 million thing that they're talking about, that tax that they're trying to do on unrealized gain, if that gets in, that's going to be on everybody eventually. It's not just going to be on the rich. That's the problem about if she gets in, those weird things, okay, that could really mess with us. If Trump gets in, so right now the market will do really well if she gets in. And the reason is because all the I'm going to call them working class, that's middle class and lower class people. And I don't mean class, I just mean what their income is. They're going to hurt under Camellia, period, because that's the wealthy are going to make more money. That's just how it works, because they're set up that way. When Trump comes in, the middle class and the working class are going to have more money because of the taxes that go away and all the regulations. So how is it overall going to work? Well, no matter what, we're going to recession. We're pretty much already there. If you look right now, the yield curve finally is no longer inverted. It uninverted today. So that means we're either in the recession or it's starting in a few months. That's how it's always worked. What does that mean? Lower rates. What does that mean? More people coming out to buy homes. And all recessions have it where rates drop and real estate goes up.
Okay.
So how's it going to go forward? So your wife will get busier. The problem is there's just not enough houses to sell because we haven't built enough homes. We are short ridiculous amount of homes nationwide. I'm talking, like, they say 3 to 4 million. I think we're more like 8 million. I think just in California alone, we're 2.5 million homes short that they need to build. God. So, and then, the Miss Harris wants to build 4 million homes or 3 million homes by the time she get her that would be like 3,000 homes a day closing, new homes. There is no way in hell to be able to do none.
Right.
Even if they build them in a factory, which is what eventually they will only do. They'll get to a point where all homes are built in a factory and then brought outside and put together. That's what they need, because you can do 6 homes a week and more, where if you build them outside, you can't do that. It doesn't build that way. You have weather and others. So I know this is a podcast about you and what your life and everything, but long story short, if you're a veteran, or if you have like 100% financing, if you're looking to buy now. Do not wait until September 18th when the Fed is going to lower rates, because that rate is already in the market right now. I'm already doing refinances at 5.625 and 5.87. Wow. And that's with hardly any costs. No escrow title fees, any of that kind of stuff. Fees, no processing fees. We do it differently. But that's where we are with those. And those rate. And so if I said the rate like I did, I have to say an APR. My APR, if I'm doing a 5.875, it's like 5.9 something. It's hardly any cost at all in that transaction. Or if you look at other people's APR, it's more than that. It's if you're doing a 5.875, they're probably 6 on their APR. And you're probably saying, what's APR? APR only means there's cost in your loan. That's all you need to remember. The higher that APR away from your actual rate means there's costs, a lot of costs.
Wow. Yeah. So the bigger the difference, the more cost.
Correct. That's so what that came out, because the Truth Lending came out so that you could shop different lenders and get a good grade. Well, these companies that pry on veterans, that's just because they know it's an easy transaction, easy to do, and nothing to it. They'll send you a thing going, I can get you a 5.25, but your APR is 5.75. It's the worst rate you could get because they're adding all this cost onto your loan. But people focus on the rate and not the cost, and veterans are trusting, and that's what you need. You stop doing that. So if they're on TV, do not use them, because there's one way they pay for that advertising. You're
paying for it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Go with somebody local. Talk to a family member who used somebody. If it's somebody a veteran, who'd you use? Local. Go local. You usually do very well by staying local. And if you need help on finding somebody, reach out to me. I'm approved in California. I'm going to be approved in all the states again. My plan wasn't to be, but it's looking like I need to, because half my people are moving out of California. So
yeah,
or just
when are you moving out of California?
I'm never moving out of California. I like the weather too much.
All right.
California politics will change. We're so far one way, it has to go back.
Right.
We're going to be bankrupt. eventually. So we have to go back the other way. And that's the same thing where we are now. I mean, if you look at
Right.
in the 80s, I tell people, if you want to see how bad this could get, is if the Democrats, that's current leftists, stay in power for another, because they've been in power, what, 16 of the 12 of the last 16 years,
16, right?
Right. And see where we're, well, just go watch the old movie, The Warriors. You ever heard of that movie?
No.
Oh, dude, it's from the 80s. So it's about a bunch of gangs who go in New York to a thing so they could all get along and no longer fight against each other. Well, they go to the subway, and it shows it's the true subway. It's not like fake subway. And you can see all the trash and the homeless and all this. It shows you how bad it can be if we keep going the way we're going. So, and other than that, it was a decent movie at the time. So, and most people remember this guy in there has 3 bottles on his fingers, and he goes, "Warriors, come out to play," and he's clanging them. So if you ever watch the movie, you'll see what I'm talking about. But anyway, so moral of the story is we need to change. We can't keep going the way we're going. Yes. There's just so many people who hate Trump and don't want him no matter what. And I don't care who the president is. If I'm in a bad neighborhood, I don't want a nice guy walking with me. I want an asshole walking with me, so they don't mess with me.
Absolutely, right? Exactly.
Yeah, I want somebody they can't understand what they're going to do.
And right. But
that's my opinion. Yeah,
I'm with you, and you have to. Well, I think there's a lot of things, but we have to learn how to think on be critical thinkers on our own, and not watch TV or get our news from TikTok. But,
stop getting. Yeah, I mean, again, 10% of them, of the things on so there's only 10% of the population who actually puts stuff on social media. So why are you getting that information from 10% of the population?
Exactly. Right.
The influencers are horrible. I mean, I have a ton of followers on all that stuff. They call me an influencer, but I don't take it seriously. Yes, if I post more often and whatever I could, but it's not who I am. I'm more radio, old school, this kind of stuff. I want to talk to somebody. I want to know how it really is.
Exactly. Right. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's relationships and dealing with individuals.
Right. And one thing we didn't talk about, which I talk about on my other one, is about niching down. And when you do it in business, you need to know who your niche is. And the closer you can get to your niche, the better you're going to do, because then the message gets to them. Have you talked about focusing on veterans, helping them with communication?
Well, I'm actually trying to go in that direction now. But part of the issue is again dealing with the VA and getting approved from that to like be able to go on bases and offer seminars and those types of things.
Where are you located?
Right now, I'm in South Carolina, in Hilton Head. So we got pretty good weather here too.
Yeah. So you're nice and sweaty. Weather. You in North?
Yeah, but
my son. Yeah, we went. I had to go to South Carolina through North Carolina to see my son. What base is it right there where they do boot camp? Is that North Carolina or South Carolina?
Okay, so there's in North Carolina. So so there's Fort Jackson. There's Fort Benning in Georgia.
Okay, that's the airborne one,
right?
And we went there too. But so the North Carolina. So you had to. So I've been there during the summer. And you guys, you're right. It was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Loved it when it rained at 95 degrees. I couldn't breathe outside.
Yeah. So I went through boot camp, and it was winter, and it does get cold there. Not freezing cold, but it does get cold. And so we had in Fort Benning at the time, we had these old barracks, and we were required to leave the windows up at night. And I got really sick. I ended up in the hospital and almost had to be recycled because I got so sick.
Wow. Yeah. So
but
I like my I could be 90 and there's no humidity, so I'm not sweating. I only sweat when you get 113, and then I don't go outside anyway. And those are and where we are, we'll hit 25 days a year above 100.
That's not bad.
on average, we're 22 days, right?
Right.
103, 105, which is not bad in a dry heat. It's not like it's, Las Vegas
Right.
122 or Arizona 122 where
Right.
your tires melt. But all right, Tim, we'd be talking for another hour if we keep going. So,
Oh, that'd be awesome, though, wouldn't it?
yeah,
Well, thank you, and thank you so much.
you can stay on afterwards. Don't run away. I'll just close it out and then stay right here. Okay. Tim, thanks so much for being on here. And again, people can find you at timnewmanspeaks.com. And what was the other place?
On LinkedIn or, pretty much any other socials that Tim NATC is what you can find.
Okay. Again, Tim, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your story and what you're doing. I appreciate it.
Sure. Sure thing.
All right,
Thanks, Ed. Take care, bud.
All right.